What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 277 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Otherworld by Phil Jimenez, Andy Lanning, and Jerome Cox. This is a 7-issue miniseries from Vertigo. This is the story of about 10 or so people from Earth who are teleported to Otherworld, where these fairies are at war with these robots, and some of the humans from Earth are aligned with the fairies, and some of them are aligned with the robots, and they all get superpowers, and then they start fighting it out, and this is all set up for a big war between these two factions. And this book, unfortunately, is not very good. In fact, I would go so far as to say there is almost nothing worthwhile about this book. Let me go ahead and start with the artwork. I am not a huge fan of Phil Jimenez's artwork. I feel like a lot of times he is trying to channel George Perez, who I do like quite a bit, and I can see a lot of Perez's influence on Jimenez, but I don't like Jimenez's artwork. I think the best way that I can describe it is it feels like it's often too busy, like there's too much going on in whatever it is he's drawing. If you look at the back here, that just looks like it's too much. I feel like if he reined it in a little bit, pulled back a little bit, didn't have quite so much going on in any given page, I think it would look a little bit better. He's very much in the camp of trying to go realistic, and sometimes that works for some artists. I don't think that it's working here. So not a huge fan of Phil Jimenez's artwork, but I know lots of people are, so if you are, you might like this book a lot more than I did. But the rest of the book, outside of the artwork, is also not very good. Like I said, I don't think there's anything good about this book. First of all, this is labeled as Book 1, but this is the only Otherworld book that we ever got. We did not get any more to this series, any sequels or anything like that, and that is a huge problem because all 7 of these issues feels like it is setting up something bigger than what we get here. This feels like the prologue to a story that we never got, and that is a huge problem when we didn't get that story. It's kind of like reviewing the first 30 minutes of a movie without the rest of the movie to talk about. It doesn't really work that way. Also, there are way too many characters in this book for the size of the book that we have. Whenever I first heard about this book, it was years and years ago on the Vertigo website. They described this as having the ensemble cast of Lost in a story that is a combination between The Lord of the Rings and The Matrix. And right off the bat, it feels like they are overselling this book because they are trying to grab all of the big hit things like Lost and The Lord of the Rings and The Matrix, all things that people love, and they are huge touchstones of our pop culture world, and let's say that this book is like a combination of all of those things, and people will flock to this book. And I can see bits and pieces of all of those things here. Really, The Lord of the Rings and The Matrix, the only similarities are that there is a fantasy versus science fiction war going on in Otherworld, and so it's kind of like Lord of the Rings versus The Matrix, but other than that, I wouldn't say that there are any similarities between those stories and this story. But I can see a little bit of Lost here with a whole bunch of people from a relatively normal world who are thrust into a very unusual, weird situation, and then eventually they kind of split off and have a little schism, and some of them they go one way and some of them go another. I can see a little bit of Lost here, but unfortunately this is like taking the first 3 seasons of Lost and shoving it into 7 issues. It just does not work. With Lost, you had 22, 23 episodes in the first season where you could explore all of these characters that you have. And you had a lot of characters in Lost. You have easily as many characters in this book. By my count, there were like 10 or so characters from Earth who are teleported to Otherworld, and most of them don't get any characterization. They're not fleshed out until towards the end of the book. And by that point, it is way too little too late. You've got a few characters who are fleshed out a little bit more at the beginning of the book, but the problem there is that these characters are wildly unlikable. We are introduced to our 2 leads who eventually will be leading these 2 different factions that are at war with each other, and they are both arguing with each other over politics in a college class, and I don't like either of these characters. They both feel very smug. They both feel like they act like they're superior to each other and that everyone should bow down to their political views. I don't find these characters to be endearing or likable, and I know that if you make every character in a story likable and endearing, then it's going to come off as very unrealistic, because in the real world, there are people who are not likable and are not endearing. But you don't want to make all of your characters in a book so hateable that it drives people away from your story. And that is what I felt like happened here. And then also, on top of all of that, you've got your main character, Siobhan. She is cheating on her boyfriend with his best friend, and so that makes her even more unlikable. So all the characters here who actually are given given a little bit of a personality and are fleshed out, they are so unlikable that it makes me not want to read the rest of this book. And if it did get a sequel, I definitely would not have read the sequel based on what I got here. So I don't think that there's anything good about this book, and I hate to say that. I always try to find at least something worthwhile in a book, but this one just did not do it for me. There is just so much wrong about this book. I have no idea if this book got a lot of negative reaction, and that's what stopped them from doing book 2, book 3, etc., or if Jimenez and the other guys who are working on this, if they just said, we're going to work on something else, we'll come back to this later, and then they never did. I really don't know why this is the only book of this series, but honestly, this is a book that did not deserve to keep going on. It didn't deserve to have sequels and more of this world explored. So I'm going to say that I would give this book a hard pass. I hope that you guys don't get too angry at me if you like this book or if you're a fan of Jimenez. If you are, let me know in the comments below. Please be civil. But that's all that I have to say about Otherworld Book 1. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.